So the Nigerian police makes a blunt new push for a secure and peaceful governorship election in Anambra State, calling on the politicians to show urgent leadership. But much as this is a welcome push, it reflects the difficult position the Nigerian authorities find themselves in as they review what to do about security in Anambra State in the face of IPOB. Without trying to burst any bubbles, and particularly that of the police, we need to be blunt about the facts. The ballot is fraught with risk, and IPOB poses an enormous threat to the conduct of the polls, not so much because they may well launch disruptive, violent attacks, but perhaps more because the voters, out of fear for their safety and security, may not turn up at all to vote, at least not in significant numbers. So psychological intimidation, which induces fear. The process of deterring an action through fear is the bigger threat. We'll get to digest all that in a moment with a team of analysts. But first, let's hear a little bit of that debate between the candidates of APC, APGA, and PDP earlier on the Arise News channel. Take a listen.
Security in Anambra is a recent phenomenon, very recent. But Anambra has remained largely a safe haven. Businesses booming, real estate booming, hospitality industries, and so on and so forth. And recently, it is a challenge, and the governor, as the chief security officer, has risen up to the challenge. And in terms of how we go forward, I see three buckets. The first bucket is really the former comb, the local security architecture. The intelligence gathering, the equipment, the military, the police, the DSS, and so on and so forth, and then the local vigilante and what that has to happen. And they're all fully undone. The next bucket is a dialogue and harmony. A dialogue and reaching some harmonious agreement with the non-state actors.
The single most critical need for Anambra is providing safety, security in Anambra, because nothing else can function well. And please, let's shift away from, casting blames to accepting responsibility. The reality is that both APGA and APC have failed Nigerians. I'm not satisfied that we've allowed things to get this far before taking an action. A single soul is so crucial. There's nothing we do that's worth the loss of a life.
In every state, the governor is the security officer of the state. But let me tell you, in this case, the governor have not done what he's supposed to do.
Well, that's a snippet of that debate, and for analysis of it and a look ahead to the upcoming Anambra governorship election, I'm joined now by the governorship candidate of the Accord Party in Anambra State, Dr. Godwin Maduka. He's in the Overflow studio and will join us in a minute. Oh, there he is. And by a stalwart of the People's Democratic Party, by his own description, who was the master of ceremonies at this weekend's PDP convention in Abuja, Ladan Salihu. And I'm also joined by our top-notch news and current affairs analyst here on Arise News, Dr. Sam Amadi. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just to set this out first, let me come to you, Sam. How do you score today's debate in Anambra State?
I think, in my view, didn't live up to the billing, considering the pedigree of at least two of those major contestants. So Soludo, Professor Soludo is well-known, brilliant, perhaps one of the smartest police intellectuals in this country. Vincent himself, Valentine himself, great guy with great experience. But on the good side, we saw primarily two candidates who seem prepared, who understand the challenges more than the third person. Now, on the good side, I think Valentine was more composed with his dressing, mannerism, showed more youthfulness, energy. You can see that. Soludo, clearly a police intellectual who has wrapped his head around the issues. I would say Valentine may be more practical, Soludo, clear. Now, the APC candidate didn't quite come to the show in terms of policy, but he showed some degree of self-control. He showed maturity in terms of absorbing some of those heckles. And I think maybe the last part of it, Soludo didn't do himself so much good by being too arrogant and hitting below the belt. But essentially, we saw two actors, two candidates who understand the policy issue and can drive development. We saw an APC candidate who probably is a leader, as he claims, and maybe would have the capacity to bring people together and find solutions. All in all, a good debate, well managed, and at the end of the day, they came together to embrace themselves. Maybe presaging, one hopes, some kind of peaceful election on November 6th. But ultimately, a good debate, but didn't get to the level I expected of the two primary actors.
Well, thank you very much indeed for setting that out for us. And let's go to our Overflow studio and speak to the governorship candidate of the Accord Party in Anambra State, Dr. Godwin Maduka. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Maduka, for joining us. And apologies for moving you to the Overflow studio. I understand it's a little bit hot there, but I also understand that you are, I mean, I've seen your performance on air many times. You're very capable, and I'm sure you'll be, in the end, able to give us your analysis. And just to mention before we start talking that Arise News is also planning to hold another set of debates before Saturday, security allowing, and the plan is to have other candidates. So it's not just the APC, the PDP and APGA. There is the potential for other candidates, there are 18 of them, to also join in that debate. Having said that, Dr. Maduka, I am assuming that you watched that debate on Arise News earlier today. Are there things that you were expecting them to talk about that they didn't?
Well, I don't think Arise TV did Anambra State the necessary thing they need to do. You have APC, you have PDP and APGA. Well, maybe your TV station doesn't realize that the bulk of the potential governors, none of them are in those three parties. Those three parties that you see there are basically defunct. And the people of Anambra State are going to vote for individuals, not for the party. I mean, it's a sorry sight to watch. You have Andy Oba, who didn't conduct a primary election, and emerges as the candidate of APC, which have a dismal performance as a senator. You have Soludo, who was elected CBN governor. None of the people from even his own state benefited from him, and had never been able to show anything for it in Anambra State. You have Val Ozigbo, who is currently unemployed, recently left the Transcorp. Never really showed anything that he has done for our state. And I should be here and play the referee for a match I should be in. I've contacted the leaders of Arise TV. I said to them last night, don't do this. Bring all the contestants in there. Let them battle it out. Those three people have nothing to offer Anambra State. Well, I watched a little bit, then I had to go to AIT and give them the necessary interview.
Right. Can I just, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Maduka, but let me just clarify a point there. And I made this stridently at the outset. Arise News is planning to hold further debates, security allowing, going forward before the ballot on Saturday. The reason it was reduced to 3 people was for the simple issue of security. I mean, Anambra State, as you know, is going through challenges at the moment, and one of the main reasons why we decided to limit the number to 3 parties and in batches like that was simply because it made expedient sense to keep the numbers down in order not to create a big security risk. But your point is taken. Please stay with us. And of course, Salihu Ladan is in the studio with us. You are a stalwart, by your own description, of the PDP party. You were in Abuja, but obviously as enthusiastic about everyone else about watching that debate. You saw it. What's your assessment of it?
Well, I think from the onset, you have to, like you did say, when you look at the challenges of security and the options that are open for those of us or you in the media, you have to navigate, Anambra State as we speak now, let's be very honest, it's like walking the minefield. You have to be very careful with every step. And so it's strategic in my view to have the three candidates debate, and then you have the second stanza, you bring in others
Absolutely.
to also
it makes
come in
absolute sense.
and it makes absolute sense. But having said that, at a time like this, when you are on the home run, sort of, it is catch your chance as your chance can catch, or whatever they say. And when you look at the debate in its entirety, to me, as a PDP person, it was a Valentine show. Absolutely.
Well, as you said, as a PDP person.
It's a Valentine show. The reason is simple. When you look at the pedigree of the two other contestants, one was a governor of the central bank, the other one, a dignified, if you like, a politician in his own right, has cut, a niche for himself, in the politics of this country. I believe I would be speaking the minds of many that they fell short of the expectations, judging from their antecedents, in terms of their expressions, in terms of the way they come on to marshal their own plans, if you like, if they have any, apart from that of the PDP. But having said that, this is democracy at play. And this is a state where nobody gave it a thought a couple of weeks ago that we will even get to a situation where we will debate the issues in any media. So to me, I think democracy is winning.
Okay, please stay with us. We're going to come back and talk about this some more. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our analysis of the Anambra governorship debate, which took place earlier on the Arise News channel, and we look ahead to the Anambra election this weekend. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Enyegolu. Now, it's a dizzying governorship election in Anambra State, a ballot that's fraught with all kinds of challenges, some of which some of the candidates have attempted to address in the first set of debates earlier today. Arise News is hoping to put on another debate ahead of the election. But when the spinning stops on November the 6th, less than 5 days from now, who's got the chair? There are 18 candidates and 2.4 million registered voters, but there's also a determined separatist group that's issued a stay-at-home order warning the people of the state not to come out to vote on Saturday in spite of the assurances given by the Nigerian police. So how much of a headache does IPOB pose, and how do the candidates who took part in today's debate assess the threat level and how best to deal with it?
Happening is a failure of leadership. Agitation happens when leaders fail their people. And so when there's a vacuum, Nnamdi came on board to fill that vacuum. Obviously, clearly, there are the areas agitation may lead to that may not be exactly how we would want it. But the truth is, those agitations, are they founded? In most cases, yes, because marginalization happens in Nigeria, and Anambra or Igbo people are part of the victims. And it's happening all over Nigeria. So I urge for dialogue. I urge for him to be released, and I urge for IPOB to be proscribed, so that we can all sit together and solve problems and take Nigeria to another level, and Anambra in particular to where we want it to be.
I believe that an idea, I may not agree with him, with his views on terms of the destination or even the means, but I believe that in a democracy, you put everything on the table. The Southeast leaders, religious, the bishops, the traditional rulers, the youths, all the groups, they're now working on a consensus that we need to dialogue on this to have a solution.
We need to sit down and dialogue. We need to find out exactly what's the problem. Killing people are not that cannot get us to anywhere. That cannot give us the independence or the freedom that we need. We need to sit down and engage and be sure what we are talking about, what their needs are. When you see that, me condemning IPOB or supporting IPOB, it's not what I'm going to say, because you need to see what the problem is in the first place before you can tackle the problem.
And with me here in Abuja, the governorship candidate of the Accord Party in Anambra State, Dr. Godwin Maduka. With me also a stalwart of the People's Democratic Party who was the master of ceremonies at this weekend's PDP convention in Abuja, Ladan Salihu, and Arise News and Current Affairs analyst Dr. Sam Amadi also here with me. Dr. Maduka, we will come to you in a moment, so please be patient with us. But let me come to you, Dr. Sam Amadi. You just heard the three candidates there talking about IPOB. There seems to be a consensus that the way, that dialogue is the way forward.
I mean, it's interesting and very reassuring that the three candidates seem to be on the same page on the importance of dialogue. And again, the two candidates of the APC, the PDP and the ABGA, went a bit further to re-echo the views of the traditional rulers and very highly respected religious leaders in the Southeast, including the Bishop of Owerri Diocese, the Bishop of Lagos, Methodists, the Pentecostal in the Southeast. So the Southeast position is clear, and that is to say that you need a political settlement of this crisis. They deplore insecurity because at the end of the day, the Southeast loses in terms of this lockdown and all that. You know, if you look at the commercial economic cost, it's huge.
Absolutely.
The social capital cost is even more because there's a degradement of the Southeast, personality. The UNESCO rated, UNDP rated Southeast the most secure, peaceful part of Nigeria. So what we've seen now that Southeast is now losing in that competitiveness because of this lockdown and this violence. So primarily, the politicians understand that this is not a kinetic action. It's not about rolling the tanks, get these guys, bump them off, arrest and kill them. Again, they understand the history that the first attempt at attacking the Afaruku invasion built up to some of these crises. So what they're saying is de-escalation. Engage these guys, de-prescribe IPOB. Because the question is around, by the time they were prescribed, they were not really even anywhere close to violent. Secondly, you've seen the issue around banditry, headsmen, and all that, and the question whether they should be prescribed. So the Southeast youths find it as discriminatory policy in the first place, see it as state violence against them. So the three actors are saying, look, let's focus on dialogue, let's retrace. They recognize that the Southeast lose more in terms of this violence. They recognize that this election is critical to go ahead. And so if what I think is that they should be doing is how to talk to the people now and say, look, like the governor of Anambra said, come out and vote, because that's no basis for locking down Southeast on November 6th. IPOB has said, we are not asking people not to vote. So let's use that and say, look, everybody come out and vote, and let's get back to helping our people to address this issue and help the government by also de-escalating. We can't be asking government to de-prescribe, release Nnamdi Kanu, and notching up the tension. We have to de-escalate. So the two go together. A de-escalation, at the same time, an outreach, and the government coming back and say, look, okay, we can deal with this. Even if later we have to prosecute some people for some crime, it won't be in this sense of national security. It will now be piecemeal criminal justice intervention where necessary. But first, pull back from the precipice, and I think that's the message they gave. Very good one.
To me, that makes absolute sense. And let me bring you in, Dr. Godwin Maduka, who is the governorship candidate of the Accord Party in Anambra State. Thank you for your abiding patience. I am assuming that you also heard this part of the discussion, if not while it was going out, the debate was going out, certainly on the program just a couple of minutes ago, that there seems to be a consensus amongst the candidates that appeared in that debate that dialogue is the way forward. What's your message on that issue? I mean, does that message concur with what they're saying? I mean, if you were governor of Anambra State tomorrow, how would you deal with the issue of security, and what would your recommendations be to the federal government?
Let me make it categorically clear. The problem that we have, especially in Anambra State, is due to the poor governance. We have the leaders that had not lived up to what they're supposed to do. But the problem is poor governance that we have in the state. Should I be a governor today, all this problem will end immediately. The youths are acting out. Yes, we have our IPOB with a different reasons, which we all know. but to do this bad at home. They're acting out towards the leaders, towards the governors. If I become the governor today, the first thing I would do, and I have said it before, you will have concurrent dialogue with the IPOB, with the unknown gunmen. We know them all, with all the courts across Anambra. All of them, while IPOB might have more anger towards what is going on, they also have anger towards the state government. So the answer to all this thing is great governance, as well as we beef up our infrastructures, protect the police and the people that are protecting us, give them all the necessary gadgets they have, pay them well too, and so that they will come out and defending our people. Another thing that I have to say all the time, if you have youth employment, if you offer them a gun and offer them employment, do you really believe they will go over there and try and start shooting each other and beheading somebody and playing? The problem is the three major parties that you heard on this show today, they had nothing to offer. They really don't. I would have wanted all of us to be there, even if we give them 5 minutes. This is not the debate Anambra people wanted to see. I'm also recommending that they come back with the rest of us and we'll talk. 3 of them don't talk for Anambra State. So the answer to the problem we have in Anambra State is poor governance, and those 3 people cannot be the good governors we want.
Well, I mean, in fairness to those people, you know, they were speaking in a very restricted environment, and you're speaking a little more freely here without, you know, having a lot more time than they actually had for each section of the discussion. But stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our analysis of the Anambra governorship debate, which took place earlier on the Arise News channel, and we look ahead to the Anambra elections this weekend. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu, and today we are taking a look over our political shoulders to the somewhat precarious situation in Nigeria's southeastern Anambra state, a situation that's made more challenging by the fact that there is a governorship election taking place there this weekend. But the candidates, all 18 of them, are pressing ahead regardless, with some of the lesser well-known parties working flat out to try to overcome the rather big odds against them, trying to find a stable position from which to steer the voters through their policies. Well, the Arise News channel has offered that platform. Earlier, we held the first set of debates, and all things being equal and security allowing, we hope to hold another debate before the ballot at the weekend. Those who took part in today's debates, the APC, the PDP and APGA, set out their positions on everything from security and healthcare to the all-important economy and internally generated revenue.
GR is an issue, and it's 28, but it's come from less than 10 billion when this government came in. And we still hope that there are several leakages that need to be plugged. We deploy technology and so on to ramp up our IGR. If we can make 5%, just 5% of the economy of Anambra in terms of our IGR, and we believe that we have got the experience and the technology to do that. We have done so before.
Look, what is happening in this stage is that IGR is being given to private family business. That's what they are doing. We are going to put on a system which we are working on to make sure, you know, gas that will run into help people in developing the power and things. We are setting up an industrial park. We will use that gas to develop that and make sure a lot of people are being employed and will make money from there.
It's really about growing the pie and cutting waste. I'm a global Kaizen champion. I know what continuous improvement is. When you get in there, you cut waste. There's so much waste around. We spend money on frivolities. We forget, you know, this government inherited 75 billion in cash, raw cash. Today we are 130 billion in debt. We generate about 28 billion in IGR and about 50 about 78, up to 80 billion. For 8 years, do the numbers. What have we done with it? If we do well, we can raise easily in 8 years 1 trillion naira. What can we say we have done with this economy? Quite frankly, there's a lot more to be desired.
And with me here in Abuja, the governorship candidate of the Accord Party in Anambra State, Dr. Godwin Maduka, a stalwart of the People's Democratic Party, who was the master of ceremonies at this weekend's PDP convention in Abuja, Ladan Salihu, and Arise News and Current Affairs analyst, Dr. Sam Amadi. Thank you for staying with us. And let me come to you, Dr. Salihu. Obviously, we heard them talking about internally generated revenue. I mean, that's a big deal in Nigeria, a big issue, particularly in Anambra State, where, from what I've read, there are more millionaires per square mile than any other part of Africa, and yet they're battling with IGR. I mean, do you think that ought to be a top priority there? Does the PDP think that?
I think it's important that you aggregate all your resources, human and material. And like you did say, if you have that number of, the number of millionaires in that state, I think it is only fair that we expect that the revenue should be in that kind of platform that will give leverage to governance by way of providing, infrastructure and other dividends of democracy. My concern, away from the issues of revenue, which is equally very important, is what we've been talking about. And you did ask the question, and Doctor made an excellent analysis. When you look at the trajectory, when you look at the challenges, in Anambra State before the election, I'd like to look at the issues on a larger, perspective. Every section of this country is challenged by one form of problem or the other. So I'd like to tell the people of Anambra State and our IPOB brothers that you are not alone in terms of your own disappointments with the status quo. You are not alone in terms of the feel of the challenges, of the contradictions and subversions in the society that we are all facing. You must come together. You have 18 candidates that are now campaigning. The atmosphere is charged. People are ready and willing to come out and participate. It is time. And to me, Charles, dialogue is not a taboo. There's the chance that I'd like to see the Ohaneze Ndigbo, Professor Obiozo, coming up with a statement reassuring people that they are all on the same page. I'd like to hear from the Iwanyanwus. I'd like to hear from credible Igbo leaders that this situation is just the first stanza of many to come. You have a dialogue, you have debate, you have consensus building, and then eventually all the issues are put on the table. Right now, it is to some of us strange that we've never known an Igbo man taking a gun against his fellow Igbo person. This is right now happening. And some of us from this part of the country are a bit, not a bit disappointed, more than disappointed with that kind of scenario. So we believe that everybody should sheath their sword, pull back, and examine what is best for Anambra State. Democracy is the answer, and when we come together, we look at the issues comprehensively and in a holistic manner. There is no solution that is not on the table. We only need to disagree to agree, and then I'm sure the government of the day is listening. You don't want to have a state under a political or security quarantine. That is what we have now in Anambra State. You don't want to have a lockdown completely. You want people to be free to exercise their own franchise. And I appeal to all that are involved in this whole process to allow democracy a chance, so that from there on you can build up, towards a level of understanding and consensus and bridge building. And I think we'll get there.
Thank you very much indeed for that. And let me come to you, Dr. Amadi. Of course, beyond people who are in other parts of Nigeria, including Dr. Salihu, including myself and yourself, who are sitting here in the studio in Abuja, the people I call armchair analysts, which include all of us, we're looking in from the outside. How do you think the people of Anambra would have reacted to this debate? Is it likely to have struck a chord with them?
I think it has. I mean, clearly, if you have followed social media, in today's world, we don't need to be on site to gauge what people are saying. Most of Nigerians are connected to either Facebook or Twitter. Absolutely. There are certain concerns that are common to people in Anambra. First, these are commercial people, so the economic argument makes sense to them. The post-debate analysis by a local radio journalist, broadcast journalist, was very clear that issues around urban renewal, issues about logistics movement within Onitsha. If you look at Onitsha, which is a commercial emporium, the level of disorder is not good for business.
Absolutely.
So clearly, the economic argument will make sense to them in terms of the IGR. How do you create more wealth? And again, people make mistakes. Some of the people who talk about IGR, like the Peruvian economist De Soto told us many years ago, debt capital. These billionaires' policy has to unlock IGR. So the level, the kind of things Salihu talk about, Dubai, Taiwan, so you need to have a sense in which you are coupling the right kind of policy to release this great entrepreneurship in Anambra. Take, for example, what Amadi did. He created those emporium, he created the Amadi layouts in Port Harcourt, elsewhere. The overall idea was a sense in which you saw the first kind of technocratic leadership, where you go to the people, unlock their capacity, give them access to come out and play, and expand wealth creation. So the kind of thing that people will be looking at is who has this capacity to expand wealth creation. This is critical for them. Again, Anambra is a place where people, middle class is high, and therefore the level of dissension, disagreement is high. So they're going to be watching for strokes of dictatorship. They would like a leader who can bring people together. So I think this debate will measure a lot to them in terms of economic, in terms of issues around creating a consensual state, being able to manage all the diverse human capacity, create a state where these billionaires can come back and invest. And like Salihu pointed out, I think of the Valentine too, is that look, the billionaires need security, they need order, they need good governance. That's what has been lacking in the main. So Anambra could actually be the most prosperous city in Africa, but it has to have the right kind of policy.
Absolutely.
And that's what the people are watching out for.
That's a very good point. And let me come to you, Dr. Maduka there. Again, we appreciate your patience. You've been listening to all of this, but what is your sense of how engaged the voters in Anambra State are? Not so much with this particular debate, but with the entire process heading to the ballot on Saturday. Is there likely to be a big turnout, or are they not terribly engaged, in addition to the fact that they are, of course, deterred by the warnings and the threats from IPOB?
Trying to look at this debate you just had, I tell you what Anambra people are saying. We have not seen the person they've been clamoring for. So for anybody to analyze what happened today is not doing the democracy the favor it deserves. Now let me tell you, the person that will be the next governor of Anambra State is somebody who had the antecedents. Somebody like me, who've been in the US 40 years and 30 years of that I've been home. I have built everything that you can see in the state, from security to hospitals, to religious, to housing, to road and bridges, with the interpersonal skills is needed. Most of these three guys, that what they're saying is really not reflective of what the Anambra people want. So we don't have no reason to comment on the economy of Anambra State, because Apoga-led government, which he was the chief strategist, is a total collapse. And the Oba can't even make any sense in anything that happened to Anambra. We sent him to Senate for 8 years. He didn't do anything. Frankly, he's not qualified to be a governor. The other guy, Valentin Ozibo, is unemployed currently. Used to work as a manager in Transcorp, where I am now. Where does that qualify him to lead the people? He asked the Anambra people, 60 to 70% of them are looking for their next governor in me. I'm the one that will change everything, bring the economic level to the level it deserves. I built the road from Enugu to Onitsha. I will clean the market. I have told them I would dredge the River Niger all the way to Atlantic Ocean so that we can clear our ports, clear our goods at Onitsha. You know, when you look at it, okay, we're blaming everything on the governance of governance. 3 of them are part of that governance problem we have. So to comment on this, it just annoys me to watch them. Where are they when all this is happening? They have no clue of what's happening down there. I am the grassroots man. I have increased the GDP of Anambra more than any of those people, investing more than $500 million, building hospitals, police stations, road and bridges, building people homes, sending students all over the world to get educated. The youth are not responding to 3 of them there. If you want to analyze the debate in Anambra State, get me in there, get Okonkwo there, get all these other people that know what they're doing. These people are total failures. There's nothing I can do. And I'm here to tell you, none of those people are going to be the governor of Anambra State.
Okay, Dr. Maduka, I want to, obviously we've got our fact checkers scrambling around there, looking at the figures that you were tossing out. But I want to say in your favor that you were voted, according to Vanguard newspaper, 2021 Anambra Governorship People's Choice. I'm sure that'll make you happy. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Dr. Godwin Maduka is the governorship candidate of the Accord Party. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead, including after that gathering of the membership of Nigeria's main opposition PDP for their convention over the weekend in Abuja. Have they now hammered out all their daunting challenges? We have post-mortem analysis. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Iniegolu, and of course, if you were in Abuja this weekend, you would not need to have been told that the main opposition People's Democratic Party was in town in force, an enormous gathering of its members for their much anticipated and much disputed convention. Thousands of delegates, observers, election officials, members of the diplomatic corps, special guests, governors, former presidents, etc. were welcome to the event, and top of the agenda was, of course, the announcement of results and declaration of winners. But also there were highlights such as goodwill messages. Underlying all that, of course, was the PDP's drive to win the next presidential election in 2023. And with me here in Abuja still, a stalwart of the People's Democratic Party who was the master of ceremonies at this weekend's PDP convention in Abuja, Ladan Salihu, and of course Arise News and current affairs analyst Dr. Sam Amadi still here with me. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. How much was this convention seen by the party as a vital stepping stone ahead of, first of all, the Anambra elections this weekend and going forward the presidential ballot in 2023?
I think the convention in its entirety was PDP pressing the reset button. When you look at the challenges, post 2019 elections, a lot of people in the PDP, a lot of us believed that at that point of loss to the ruling APC, one would have expected that in a normal setting for the entire structure of the party to resign. Here we are. We've done our best, but maybe our best wasn't enough for our party to win. And one would have expected, like I said, Prince Secondus and his team to say, thank you very much for the opportunity to serve. We've done our best, but our best maybe wasn't enough for us to succeed. I think we need fresh people on the starting blocks. Again, now that didn't happen. Of course, this is Nigeria for you.
Absolutely.
And it didn't do the party any good. So I think the leaders of the party and those who, were strategically looking at the issues came up with this idea of having an early convention to elect new leadership so that you'll be in pole position to wrestle power from the APC-led government. And so this is, it was a convention that was hugely successful, well attended, entirely well structured, and the PDP family is coming together. We are having every manner of reconciliation, reach out, bridge building, and of course we had setbacks in the last 2 years with 3 governors defecting, but I can assure you 2 of those governors will come back at least, and 3 other governors will leave their positions and come back, and come into the PDP as we get into the new year. So on the whole, the convention was a strategic move by the party to ensure that all the eggheads, all the relevant people, the stakeholders are brought together to think it through on the ways and means of putting ourselves in pole position to win the elections come 2023.
Well, Dr. Sam Amadi, you are a close observer of these things, and we always welcome your analysis. I mean, beyond what Dr. Salihu has just said, I mean, the analysis, the fact that they're hoping that everybody is going to come together and hold hands again. I mean, there are senior members of the PDP who wonder why the PDP doesn't have a shadow cabinet and a spokesman for every ministry in this country to really reassure the public that they're serious about getting this election, take on the government, play the role of a proper opposition that's snapping at the heels of the government's agenda. What's your assessment of that?
I think clearly very successful convention. They are helped also by the fact that the court now seem to have validated, authorized their convention. So there will be little dispute around its legality. Again, the fact that the major actors seem to have more of consensus for most of the positions, so it strengthens post-convention politicking for them. But the PDP's crisis has been that the PDP has always privileged politicking rather than policy. And so when they lost power, and many of us were in the government with Jonathan then, was in the government, one of the things we told them was, look, redefine yourself. PDP needed to have put up a new face. Find a way back to get back the civic consciousness, because the PDP was a party that was supported by the civil society. People forget that Jonathan's coming to power in the days was struggling with the cabal, was actually a civil society. I was then director of policy of Good Governance Group. I was part of Seven Nigerian Group. So it was PDP was kind of accepted by the civic society. Now, the whole argument around corruption, the APC smartly won back the mindset, the concept of the Twitter age generation, the demographic that's very critical. PDP has not made a fight for that demographic. They have not done that because they have not been able to raise the idea of policy. They have got stuck too much with the squabbling for power within the governing elite. And the argument is, look, a party has 2 directions. You win the votes, you win the argument. That sustains the vote. That's what APC did. APC won the argument. APC branded PDP wrongly, and PDP are saying, look, we're not as corrupt as they made us look like, but they made you look very corrupt.
And it's perception that
absolutely
matters,
and now PDP is not working hard to make itself look good. So the agenda for post-convention is to get back to being a party of ideas. The realism PDP has about power, okay, the big guys come, they have the money, they have the network, they win power. That's not where we are now. Ideas are shaping voting behavior. The elections are getting more transparent. State security apparatus is getting weaker. And so the PDP stands a chance of overhauling the APC, especially a ruling party has a problem, midterm elections or whatever. Because you're going to run on your record, and records never look so good. And this government, give or take, has not performed as they would expect. So we can argue whether cup empty, half full. That means the PDP can actually win this election to 3 if they start building around becoming the party that people can trust again, putting new faces. You might not get the new faces for the presidency, but how about the governors of states that are critical? Because these are local elections that mobilize consciousness.
Absolutely.
So if you have younger governors
and they become bellwethers for the big election,
who are technocratic, who people can look at as valuable people, progressives, then you are mobilizing, creating more consciousness. And now they should be talking about party registration. The 18-year-old, 20-year-old, 25-year-old who will decide this election don't have any party affiliation. So PDP really needs to move a little bit from politicking for the big
That's a
office.
very good point. So let me bring you in, Ladan Salihu. Who gets to shape the PDP's strategy for this country? Do some people or groups of people have greater influence? Are there some who hold greater sway and set the pace? Because, I mean, we're talking about this issue of a shadow cabinet, for example, something that they should be doing, but we're not hearing that sort of thing that would instill confidence in the voting populace.
I think what we are having on the platform now is the idea of managing perceptions and overcoming some of the issues, raised by Doctor. Now, clearly, PDP is well schooled on the nuances of politics and the challenges that are before us as we, steamroll to 2023. I will not be the one to let the cat out of the bag, but I can assure you that the idea behind electing a new leadership of the party ahead of the tenure, deadline of the present executive was to ensure that some of the issues he raised are well taken care of. And I can assure you we are not oblivious of the challenges of, the media, of strategizing. And there is a network that is silently working with the transition committee from the present executive to the ones that are currently elected. And that is why you have in the present structure of those elected, a former Senate president, a tested politician.
Who's now the chairman of
who is now the chairman.
UGI.
And he has a list of people behind him.
Okay.
And we are good to go. I can assure you some of the issues.
We will hold you to those assurances when next we meet.
Ladan,
Salihu, and of course Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you very much indeed. That's it. Bye-bye.